Andrew Scheer. Hi, Mr. Scheer. It's good to have you here in studio.
Great to be here again.
I appreciate you making the time. I've asked the same question of your counterpart in government, but I wanted to ask you as well. How can Canadians expect your party to approach this session that is different from the last one?
Well, a lot of that will depend on what the government brings forward. Parliament is about to start. We don't yet have a clear idea of what their priorities are going to be. There's some really easy stuff, though, that they can do that would get the approval of the House of Commons. That would be to undo the terrible Liberal policies from the previous Parliament. So if the government wants some easy ideas, some low-hanging fruit to improve the lives of Canadians, they could start with, for example, repealing Liberal Bill C-75 and C-5. Those are two pieces of legislation that the Liberals brought in that caused the explosion of crime in our communities with their easy bail instead of jail policies. They could fully and completely eliminate the carbon tax for everyone on everything, including the industrial side as well, so that our Canadian manufacturers are not playing shorthanded against their American competitors. They could repeal Bill C-69, that's the No More Pipelines law, which led to a complete desertion of our energy sector by investors and massive attack on jobs throughout Canada, including Western Canada. So those are some really easy things they could do that they could bring forward to the House that we not only would we support, we've been calling for it.
The leader of the government, the government House leader, has led us to believe in interviews that you and him have frequent conversations. Are there any conversations that have taken place on the priorities you just outlined that would see movement on that?
Well, we've had some good discussions. I've worked with Mr. McKinnon before, and we have I believe we have a good working relationship and a good appreciation of what each other has to do for the interests of what their parties stand for and what they believe in, and for the voters that vote for them. I've expressed, our leader has certainly expressed to the Liberals what we would be looking for. Pierre Poilievre has suggested that what the Liberals should do is steal more of our ideas. It was the Liberals basically had to spend a bunch of time during the campaigning against their own record and promising to Canadians that they won't do more of the things that caused the explosion in housing prices and rent prices, the devaluing of workers' paycheck with their inflationary deficits. They had to campaign against their signature economic and environmental policy on the carbon tax. So we hope they steal more of our ideas, because that's conservative ideas are what will improve the quality of life for all Canadians.
Is there, and I understand it's going to depend on the substance of everything that they do, but is there a willingness on your party's part on those matters that you just laid out? Because some of what you mentioned, like C-69, for example, or even in addition the emissions cap, are things the Prime Minister is now signaling he is open to reversing. Is that something Canadians can expect if, on principle, not the substance, because we haven't seen any of that yet, the Conservatives will not just oppose for the sake of opposing? And I think of the example of dental care, for example, which your party was very opposed to while you were in opposition in the last session. And then during the election, your policy was that people who had it could keep it, right? So, to reconcile that, are you able to say, there will be a different posture in principle to Canadians watching now?
Well, we are going to give the Liberals an opportunity to bring forward their agendas, and then we'll make those decisions as we see it. When we see the legislative priority that they unveil, we'll scrutinize it. That's our job. Our job is not to rubber stamp things before they're even introduced in the House. Our job is to ruthlessly, on behalf of taxpayers and Canadians, go through everything line by line and then make a decision. When we're talking about reversing, Mark Carney has had a terrible first couple of weeks. He's got a housing minister that says that housing prices don't have to come down after Carney campaigned during the campaign on making housing more affordable. You've got Stephen Guilbeault still in cabinet saying mistruths, falsehoods about the energy sector, claiming that we don't need more pipelines because our pipelines are underused, not mentioning the fact that hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in the energy sector have left because there's no ability to get energy to market. So we have to wait and see what Mark Carney actually lands on, because so far he's been on both sides of a few key issues.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think, and I certainly didn't mean to imply rather that the opposition's job was not to oppose, but I think the message from Canadians, and you have acknowledged this in other press conferences, and so has Mr. Poilievre, the message from Canadians, I think, is in the face of a crisis when there are places that we can work together, perhaps like this is the time, if any, to look and seek out those places. And my example of dental care was like, I can remember on multiple occasions your party vehemently saying it was a terrible thing and a terrible idea, and then the fact that it was in your platform as something you would keep for the people who still had it is difficult to reconcile.
Well, you know, you mentioned specifically working together on things that face our country as a crisis, and on that you're absolutely right. Our leader Pierre Poilievre has signaled that on strengthening Canada's position to deal with these unjustified and unfair tariffs from the United States that we want. We want the government to succeed in getting those tariffs lifted on behalf of Canadians. We believe that the best way to do that is to make Canada stronger, to make Canada a more attractive place to invest. If you've got American investors trying to do business in Canada, you're more likely to have more pressure put on the U.S. administration to lift those tariffs. And when you have a Liberal government that's canceling major pipeline projects, imposing an industrial carbon tax on our steel and aluminum manufacturers, it's less likely that you're going to have that leverage. But by all means, you know, if there are things that Mr. Carney believes that we can be helpful on to help advance his goal of removing those tariffs, we would take a look at those, obviously. But I do need to point out that Mark Carney has set the bar for himself very high. You know, he has said that he's the man you hire in a crisis. He said that he can handle all these kinds of things and that he's got the solution. So we're heading into a time of the year where there's some troubling economic data. When Canadians' household debt is continuing to rise, we've got job losses in some key sectors, and these tariffs are still on. They have not come off. He has not got that deal yet. So while we want those tariffs to come off and we want to be helpful in doing what we can to ensure that happens, we are going to hold this government to account to actually get results. It's not enough to just announce your intentions and say things during a campaign. You actually have to deliver.
What do you think of the relative positioning of someone like Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith, who has made it easier in that province to hold a referendum, and that referendum could very much be on the issue of separatism? I don't think that the feelings of alienation in both your home province of Saskatchewan and Alberta should be dismissed in any way. But is that kind of playing with fire at a time when you are scrutinizing, and Canadians are scrutinizing, our relative leverage with the U.S.?
What I would say about that topic in general is that we have to understand why people in Western Canada are upset. They're upset because their way of life has been attacked. They're upset because they have had to have that salt in the wounds, the insult to injury. Not only do people have their businesses go bankrupt, some of those businesses in the oil and gas sector have had to sell their equipment to U.S. companies who drill down into the exact same basin that they were operating in Canada, and they're auctioning off their equipment at pennies on the dollar. That devastates communities, it bankrupts business owners, and it lays off hundreds, if not thousands, of people. So we have to understand why people are upset. I believe that the best course of action to preserve national unity is to have a conservative government that allows every region in this country to excel at what they do best, to grow their industries, to be prosperous and successful in a united Canada. I believe conservative solutions will get us there and keep our country united.
But right now the Conservatives aren't in government, right? And they are well represented in your party is well represented in those two provinces. But it appears like there might be some political utility in putting the prospect of separation at provincial level on the table. Is it not incumbent on federal parties to do whatever they can? And that's not to take away from the stuff that you spelled out about why they feel so alienated, but isn't it incumbent on your party, for example, to do everything you can to dispel the idea that separation is the solution?
Well, I think it's incumbent on Canadians to work towards that united Canada. That's certainly what our party is going to do. I believe the quickest and best way to resolve these issues is to repeal those Liberal bills that cause the economic damage that is leading to the alienation. And that's how we're going to preserve that unity. We're going to fight for Canadian unity by fighting against those Liberal policies that cause so much damage, not just to Western Canada, by the way. There's a lot of manufacturing jobs in Ontario that depend on heavy equipment purchases in Alberta, in Saskatchewan. There are lots of people in Ontario and Quebec who don't want to import oil from the United States or from countries around the world with completely different value sets, with governments that don't align with Canada on anything from human rights to foreign affairs. So there's a lot of goodwill. It's not just a Western Canadian issue. For sure, there's the most profound negative impacts of those Liberal policies are felt in Western Canada, but there's good reason to support these energy projects and to repeal these Liberal bills across the country. New Brunswick imports a lot of oil from the Middle East for their refinery. That doesn't make sense.
Is the Premier wrong, though, to make it easier to hold a referendum on the issue? I mean, oil production has increased. It was at record levels last year.
Well, we saw periods of time in Canada where where energy companies had to sell their product at a loss just to get it transported. That's in recent memory. We saw tens of billions of dollars of investment withdrawn. We had big mining projects like Tech Frontier canceled, all because of Liberal legislation. So again, I believe the best way to address this from the federal level, I'm a federal politician, I represent Saskatchewan in the House of Commons, the best thing I can do to address those issues in Western Canada is to do everything I can in the House of Commons to repeal those Liberal policies.
Can you do both at the same time? Can you condemn the use of a referendum and making it easier? Because you're choosing not to.
I can absolutely advocate for a united Canada. I can absolutely encourage people in Western Canada to work with us in the Conservative Party to get those bad Liberal bills repealed. I think that that is the best way to arrive at the destination of a united Canada. We don't have a problem in Western Canada with people in other parts of the country because there are vast differences in them. We just see right now a federal government that is damaging our way of life, damaging our ability to be prosperous. And once we alleviate that, I believe once we can repeal those bills, if we can convince the Liberal government to do that, I believe we're going to see a lot of that Western alienation naturally dissipate.
But you don't want to say a referendum is the wrong path?
Well, I mean, I'll leave it to provincial premiers to handle what's going on in their province. I'm not a resident of Alberta. I don't, I'm a resident of Saskatchewan. That's not something that our premier's been talking about. But I can certainly advocate for United Canada. I believe that everybody in Alberta or Saskatchewan, BC for that matter, should reflect on getting rid of those Liberal bills as the easiest and quickest way to allow our provinces to grow and be prosperous, and also to recognize that there are people in other parts of the country, people in other provinces that are aligned with us on this issue, that want to see our energy sector succeed both in their own regions and because their industries benefit from that growth in the energy sector.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks, Mr. Scheer.